Hey there, it's Nick Hopwood, CFP and founder at Peak Wealth Management. Welcome to Trust the Plan. Today, it's just me with a special guest, Steve Gruber. You may recognize Steve from the bi-weekly spots that I do with him on his show on Real America's Voice. It's also broadcast on the radio. And so we thought it would be fun to talk with Steve, do a little bit of a behind the scenes backstory for Steve, because you might see him on TV, listen on the radio, but not know everything about the guy. So everything from, what he did before TV and radio to his most recent interview with RFK Jr. and beyond that, talking about some of his hobbies when he was in the Oval Office, and what he did to get through COVID with, the radio station and TV station shutdown. Some fun stories there. So, I hope you enjoy our time with Steve Gruber. Hey, Steve, it's great to have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Nick, glad to be here. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I know people see us once every couple of weeks together on Real America's Voice, but, and people listen to you on the radio and see you on TV, but I figured it would be fun to talk about a little bit of the Steve behind the scenes.
All right.
All right. So let me get into some professional questions here. How long have you been hosting the Steve Gruber Show?
Well, that particular program, I think, I had to think about this, just over 12 and a half years. It started in March or April of 2012. I think it was March of 2012, actually, we kicked off on like 4 stations. Cumulus came along and some folks in the Lansing, Michigan market said, hey, we've got this vacancy, and they had tried a bunch of people. And so I said, well, I don't really want to do it. But they said, just try it. Fine. So I came in one morning early because it's like god awful early. And I sat down. I was the 17th person that they had dumped in the chair. And then they said, you're the guy for the job we want to hire. It's like, guys, I have a job. I was working for a company that I started called Wolf Creek, making outdoor television all over the world, having a good time. Anyhow, finally, they just kept bugging me. Finally, I just said, if you'll stop calling, I'll do this. And it's just turned out to be great fun for me. Of course, I've been in broadcast for a long time, but it's been great fun, and it continues to grow, and here we are.
So when you started the radio show 12 years ago in Lansing, my dad worked in radio in Lansing for like 45
Correct.
years. Were you in the WFMK, WITL station, broadcasting from there?
I was in that cluster. It was owned by Cumulus at the time. And of course, it's since been sold, as a lot of radio stations have. But yeah, your dad was there. I knew your dad pretty well, actually. And there's I don't know, 6 or 7 stations in that cluster that then were sold off to Town Square. And as a result of that, you see, we own a couple of networks as well. The Michigan Talk Network and Michigan News Source are 2 different entities. Michigan Talk Network is where my program broadcasts on 25 radio stations around the state. Of Michigan News Source about the same. But those were things that when Town Square came in, see, Cumulus owned 300 or 400 stations. Town Square owns a couple of hundred or more, big broadcasters. And they didn't know what to do with these networks that had been around since about the year 2000. And they said, you want to buy them? And I said, yeah. And Ivy and I, my wife and I, said, yeah, we'll buy them. And we did. And we've been building it up. So they didn't know quite what to do with them. Because not really in their business model, if you will. But in our business model, it was great because we got to own a couple of networks, and the networks are not brick and mortar. We're content creators. We create content, be it my morning show or news or weekend programming and a bunch of different stuff.
So not only are you the talent on air, which seems like all day long, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm on a lot.
But you're a full-fledged small business owner, as you were describing. What is it like being in the chair all day and running a whole business behind the scenes?
Well, you've got to commit. If you're you're a business owner. And if you're going to do anything in life, you have to commit. You got to say, look, I'm going all. You can't go half in. You can't go partially in. Because anybody that truly owns a business knows that you don't truly own a business. The business owns you a good portion of the time. Because you have to take calls and do things. Well, you're sitting at your kid's basketball game or football game, whatever it is, your phone goes off, and it's a client or a customer or an affiliate, in this case, a radio station that's having some hiccup or something. Well, you've got to take that call. Other people can sit there and watch the game. people that have 9 to 5 jobs or jobs they work for the corporation, whatever. Not their responsibility, but it is mine. And you understand that. You get people that call and say, "Hey, how'd you lose my money?" Or "How much money did you make today?" Or "What's going on with the market?" I mean, I can anticipate the kind of things that you get. But you have to go all in. You have to commit yourself to a business, to a philosophy, a direction. And we've done that much more so lately. I think there were times in my life that I had businesses and ran them more like a hobby as opposed to a business. And when you go all in, no matter what it is in life, the results are far better, I think. I mean, you have real results at that point.
So 12 years since you've been, doing the show. What did
Yep.
you do leading up to that? And tell us about the transition into radio and TV.
Well, radio and television is what I've done my entire adult life. I first broadcast about 1987-ish, back when WFMK in Lansing, Michigan was out in Williamston, actually,
Yeah.
in a building out in Williamston.
I've been in that building. I drive past it every once in a while,
Yeah.
and some memories come back.
Yeah, me too. Yours are probably better than mine. Anyhow, so I went to work at FMK. I did Solid Gold Saturday night. And the first time I was ever on the air was because there was a tornado warning. And I had to go on the air because I was just doing a board op show in the middle of the night. And I had to go on, say that a funnel cloud had been spotted. And that's, what was going on. So I've been in broadcast ever since. From there, I went to Montana State University, moved out of state, but there was a radio station on my way into town. Kept driving by it. Finally, I wheeled in, got myself a job there, AM 1240, and music to die by. It was elevator music, but they did news at the top and the bottom of every hour. So it was great practice for a young guy. I was like 22 years old, reading news all the time. Then I got hired back in Lansing at WILX TV, Channel 10 in Lansing, where I was a weekend anchor, and then I was a 6 and 11 o'clock anchor, and I pretty much anchored every show there, noon and 5, 6 and 11, weekends all over the place. And then I went on to Columbus, Ohio, WCMH, Channel 4 Columbus. Had a good run there for 4 years, but really got burned out in the news industry. Didn't think I'd ever go back, and yet here I am today, right? Thought I'd be gone because I had started my own company called Wolf Creek. We were making outdoor adventure programming for Outdoor Channel and Men's Channel and Pursuit Channel and all these outdoor hunting and fishing and adventure channels. And it was great fun. We traveled the world. I mean, we went to Africa and South America and all over Canada and all over Alaska. We went all over the place to hunt and fish and carry on, and had just a tremendous time. Did filming in Mexico and some other great places. Anyhow, and so it was in that mix that I got a call from a guy that I knew that said, "Hey, you should try out this radio program." And that's how I ended up going to the radio program.
So you mentioned the hunting and fishing TV show. You're very much an outdoors guy still. Whenever you're out of town, it seems like you're doing something out in Montana or on the Appalachian Trail or something.
Oh, yeah. I'm pretty blessed. I've got to be honest. Ivy, who I met just about the time I started this radio program, shortly thereafter, I met Ivy, who I've been married to now for almost 11 years. We really hit it off, and she loves being outdoors. She's very outdoor. In fact, she's a better fisherman than I am. I've been no, she loves to fly fish and wing shoot and do all the things I like to do. So yeah, we do go to Montana. I mean, our honeymoon was in Alaska on a moose hunt, and it was tremendous. And we've been a lot of great places, and we will be again. Right now, we're really busy. I mean, I talk a lot of politics, so it's an election year. It's a tight election year. It's a coin flip right now by anybody's, estimation. People can say they know it's going to happen. They don't. I'm not sure. I have my inkling that I think it's going to go back towards the Republicans, but we'll see. I don't think anybody's too happy about some of the things that have happened over the last 4 years, but I don't know if it's enough to change the outcome of the election. We'll find out. But yeah, we do a lot of stuff outdoors. We really like it, and we work out, and we ride bikes, and we fish, and we hunt. My son got a great deer this year already in Michigan. So yeah, we spend a lot of time outdoors. But a part of that's the health pursuit. Ivy's very health conscious, which therefore I'm very health conscious. I mean, I was always decent, but she's real mindful of eating raw and making sure that we don't have a bunch of garbage on the table, because we don't want to look like the rest of the world. We don't want to be, diabetic and obese and all these things. So we are very mindful not to get there. So it's all kind of comes together. The hunting, the fishing, the eating right, and eating healthy. It's all kind of there together.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. If you're gonna be that active, you have to take care of yourself with your fuel and your exercise. So
Sure.
I've seen you promoting it, like maybe commercials talking about selling some health products or
We
health
do.
promotional stuff.
Yeah.
Tell me about that, and what's the 75 hard program all about?
I'll tell you about that. But for My Pure Health is a program. It's a Michigan-based company, My Pure Health, and I hooked up with them right at the beginning of 2018, so a number of years ago. And so they have a weight loss program, and it had been on some other radio programs of people that I knew. And so I asked about it, and they're based right down in Battle Creek, Kalamazoo area. And I said, okay, I'll give it a try. Well, I lost 47 pounds in
Oh,
about 65 days,
whoa.
which is pretty dramatic, right? It's like being on the show alone. You're out there, you must catch fish to live. No, that's not quite it, but close enough. Anyhow, but it was real food. It was real effective, and I really like the people. And I've been telling people ever since, if you want to lose weight effectively without a bunch of fill-in nonsense and garbage prepackaged, bars and shakes, because that's not what it's about. That the program, My Pure Health, you eat real food, a lot of protein, a lot of green, a lot of protein and green, and you have supplements because they figure out, what your body's out of balance, what's out of whack. They dial it in, figure out your frequency, because we all have our own different frequency. Like something that I eat might bother me, but it might not bother you. Rice, I love it, but rice kind of sits with me, so I get big on rice, not so much on other things. And it's a great program. So I recommend it highly. It's really changed. I mean, we've had people, I've been working with Missy and the folks there for years now. I've actually had people call and tell me that they've lost more than 100 pounds following the program, which is remarkable. The point is, it's changing lives. And that's just one example. We don't, and when I say we, I mean Ivy and I, we do not promote products or have people on that we don't trust ourselves. You, for example, we wouldn't have you on the program if we didn't trust you. We've gotten to know you. I knew your dad, of course, so that's a pretty good place to start. But we know and trust the people that we endorse. We don't just take a check and say, hey, sure, we'll tell you, buy this widget. It's the greatest thing ever. We don't do that.
Yeah.
And as far as 75 hard goes, that was a challenge that Ivy laid on my desk about a month ago. And if you haven't heard of it, 75 hard is basically 5 rules. You have to be on some sort of a dietary program. And they say it's not a weight loss program. It's not a diet. It's not a workout program, but you have to be on some sort of dietary program. You do have to work out 45 minutes twice a day. And one of those times has to be outside, regardless of the weather conditions. Fortunately, we've been blessed so far. We've had really nice weather. It's been dry, but I know that's going to change. October in Michigan gets ugly before it's over. So one of those has to be outside. No cheat meals. You can't go have a burger and fries, whatever. You have to read 10 pages of a nonfiction book that will be something about improving your life. It's not a self-help book necessarily. In fact, I've been reading Grant Cardone books, The 10X Rule, and Sell or Be Sold, and some really great business books and wealth building books that I think are terrific. And you have to drink a gallon of water. And those really are the rules. Oh, and not one drop of alcohol. No alcohol. Got to be on a health program. The alcohol thing. So for 75 days, no wine, not a beer, not anything. And that means through my birthday, through election day, and almost to Thanksgiving. So anyhow, but we've done it. We're like 25 days in, something like that. And I'm kind of impressed. I've lost about 8 pounds. I'm definitely leaner. Ivy's lost 3 or 4 pounds. She's definitely leaner. And like I just got back from doing an hour on the road bike, riding outside. So there's one of the workouts, riding an hour on my bike, put on about, I don't know, 14 miles, 13 miles, whatever it was. But yeah, so we're doing all that all the time. And I love it. And I feel good about it.
And you also mentioned protein. That's one thing that I've changed this year. I like to work out 4 or 5 times a week. And one thing I changed was eating 160 grams of protein per day. And
Wow.
it's really changed my body composition. It's something that you can stick with. You don't have to feel like you're on a diet. You can still have some carbs, you know.
Right.
But I started that in January 1, and I've actually gained a lot of weight because the protein adds muscle.
Sure. And absolutely.
So
The thing that we avoid, not completely because you kind of can't, but we avoid the sugar. I
yeah,
mean, I read, Ivy had me read a book a while back called The Case Against Sugar, and all the diabetes and how sugar spikes your serum cholesterol. Eating a ribeye doesn't. They'll say, oh, don't eat that, too much nonsense. A ribeye is good for you. It makes your synaptic relays fire. You need that cholesterol. The cholesterol makes your brain work. But all that sugar that's in everything. I mean, when you pick up a package of meat at the grocery store and you look at it, it's bacon or whatever it is, and it's filled with sugar. You're going, I don't need sugar in my meat. I don't need that. And that's, to me, it's just reckless and silly. So the rule that we live by primarily anymore, and I've had the good fortune to speak with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And regardless what you think of him on all of his issues, I will say this: he's right about the food we put in our bodies. And his theory is, if it's packaged or prepackaged, you probably shouldn't eat it. And Ivy's theory recently is, if you can't make it in your own kitchen or come reasonably close to whatever it is you're buying and eating and putting in your mouth, you probably shouldn't eat it, right? So Doritos are off the list. You can't make that. You can't come up with that list of chemicals and make it. You just can't, right? Forget about it.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about RFK Jr. because that was just last week, and it must have been pretty exciting because he's become a big name. The recent announcement with the election and with the ballot, taking himself off the ballot, joining Trump's team. But all that aside, it would be a good transition talking about health, asking about how it was to interview him with a nice crowd, with live TV stream. And yes, he talks about vaccinations and make America healthy again, and among other things. But how was that? Do you count that like as do you think of that for yourself as a great achievement to be in a position like that?
Important. I think getting big interviews is a benchmark for us, and it is for Ivy as well. I remember the first time we had tried in 2016 and tried several times, and it got no traction with getting Donald Trump, right? It's the day before the election. We're riding along in my truck. I don't know where she gets off the phone. She goes, "We got him." Mm-hmm. I'm like, "We got who?" I said, "No, we did." And I can remember the look on her face because she was proud. And then we did the interview the next morning on election day. So Donald Trump called the radio program. First time I ever interviewed him was the morning of the election, 2016. It was a big deal to her. It was a big deal to me. And he was on for 10 minutes. And obviously, as you know, he went on and won that election. So we talked to him on the day he was elected president of the United States before any of us knew. And it's kind of a cool thing. And so, yeah, it's a big accomplishment. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to set up a town hall event with almost 400 people in the room, taking questions from the audience, live audience, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the last, probably best known member of Camelot that's still alive, right? He's the last real connection, direct connection to Camelot, because he was at the White House when his uncle was president. He obviously was here when his father was assassinated after his uncle had been assassinated 5 years earlier. Interesting conversation, fascinating guy. I can only imagine what it'd be like to grow up as a Kennedy. Was it a blessing? Was it a curse? We didn't get to that question, but the point being, it was interesting. And he's a really smart guy, and he reads a lot. I mean, the book that he wrote, The Real Anthony Fauci, should be very telling to a lot of people. Should be.
So you had the presidential candidate in 2016 on a call-in interview, but you were at the White House after that in the Oval Office for a live interview. What was that like?
That was fascinating. So that day, we were told the night before we were going to D.C. because during the Trump administration, they had great access. Every quarter, every 6 months, they'd invite us out to have basically a radio scrum. So we could all set up. There'd be like 25 different radio programs, and we'd be in a room off the side of the Capitol in the executive building there, where Congress does much of their work and their offices are. And we get set up there, and the night before we land, and funny, I had forgotten my suit. I forgot my suit coat on the hanger in the plane. So I'm screwing around. So I have to leave. And Ivy's down at baggage claim. I come running back. She goes, "We got him." I said, "We got who?" Here we are again. "We got who?" Tomorrow we get to interview the president in person. I was like, woo, high five. So the next day we get there. And we wait around because you can't tell anybody. And a couple of us were going to get up and just basically sneak out of the room with everybody else, just quietly. Don't make a fuss about it, because then they're all going to want this anyhow. So we get up and we get to the reception area outside the Oval Office, right? And you got to remember, when they built the White House and so forth, it wasn't gigantic, right? It wasn't, they didn't build things the way they do today. So you're in this waiting area. And all the people in the cabinet are going through, all the people you know, and there goes Ben Carson and just, different people. They're like, hey, good morning, how you doing? Because you're right there, right? And so we're going into I believe it was the Roosevelt Room. They said, okay. And so there was 2 TV programs and 2 radio programs. And they said, okay. And we ended up being 4th in line. And I'm thinking, well, we may or may not, because they're waiting for a cabinet meeting. There's a cabinet meeting about to happen. They're like, well, run behind, and get here. And they're getting the people through. And I'm watching my watch, and now it's 10 after. And the cabinet meeting is going to start at 11:30, and it's quarter after 11. Now it's 20 after. Now it's 25 after 11. And they had brought us into this little room, the Roosevelt Room, just to show us where we're going to interview the president. And finally, they said, okay, you can come on in. And we walk in that room, and there's nobody there. The camera crews are gone. It's completely empty. And I'm like, Ivy and I are looking at each other. I don't know what's going on. Don't know. The guy pops in and says, hey, I hope you don't mind, but we're going to go ahead and do this interview in the Oval Office, if that's all right with you. Yeah, that'll be fine. Sure. Absolutely. That'll be fine. And so it's really surreal even now to think about it. So the Oval Office is a good sized office, but again, they're not the way people build stuff today in America, which is gigantic, right? So we wait there, and then they bring you across. So from the Roosevelt Room, you go across a short hall, and there's a large gentleman there in a smartly tailored uniform. And you start to reach for the door handle. He goes, wait. Okay, yep, sorry. And so then something happens, and then he reaches around, he opens the door and opens it. And we're at the back of the room, and you look across probably, I don't know, 60, 80 feet, whatever it is, and you go, man, that looks like the Oval Office. That looks like what the president would look like if he were sitting at his desk in the Oval Office. Then you realize that is the president. He is at his desk, and this is the Oval Office. So, I mean, for me, you walk in and you've got the paintings of Jefferson and Jackson and the artwork from Remington and Russell, these big bronzes, of horses and buffalo and so forth, these bronze masterpieces from American masters, and just the whole place. And to think that you come over and there's the Resolute desk given to America, I believe 1890 by Queen Victoria, where you've seen the pictures of John Kennedy and his children with the doors open and the kids are running around at the same desk, and you see they're just remarkable. So Ivy and I both touched the Resolute desk, stood there, and then you interview the president. That was interesting and that was fun. Can't wait to do it again. Actually, can't wait to do it again.
Great story. All right, Steve, I have time for one more question for you.
All right.
Let's go back to COVID. They shut down the radio station. You got to figure out a new studio setup. So you're right now at home, right? You've got a great studio in the house, tons of great equipment. I was there one time and I was very impressed with the green screen and all that. It was pretty exciting. So tell us how you got through that and now what's become of it.
Well, we got lucky. Better to be lucky than good any given day of the week, right? So we went to the National Prayer Breakfast, I believe it was. It would have been end of February, early March 2020. And we were on our way to some friend's house, Ivy and I were, Friday night after we had gotten back. And we're listening to the radio, and somebody says, well, somebody has been diagnosed with this virus. They didn't call it COVID then. It was just this virus. We had been hearing rumblings about it. I remember Tucker Carlson was talking about it at the time, saying you need to take this seriously. It could be a real problem. And so we called the general manager of the radio station and said, hey, we're at this event. Apparently COVID was in the mix. We don't know really, what it means. And I said, what do you want me to do? And she said, I don't know. Yeah, well, you know what? Give me a few minutes. I'll call you back. Okay. So a few minutes later, she calls back and says, look, you've got the radio equipment. And this is, we've been doing television, but it all kind of moves the same. She says, you have the stuff to go remotely, right? You can broadcast remotely. Sure. She said, why don't you just do that for a week or two and then, then just come back in? Well, as you can imagine, what happened was just the opposite of that. So we took and moved the studio at our leisure to the bonus room over our garage. We took and turned in what had been, a nice space and just turned into a studio above our garage, and it was beautiful. And within a few days, the whole world went upside down. Everybody at those 6 stations in Lansing were panicking, trying to figure out how to get out of the building because all of these edicts have been handed down, and a national emergency had been declared on the 13th of March, 2020 by Donald Trump, that the president And everybody was, and Ivy and I are sitting at home going, wow, we're broadcasting just fine. Everything's all set up. We had full access to the engineers at the station. Ivy's very talented when it comes to IT stuff and setting all this stuff. In fact, the studio that I sit in here, this is her design. This is her work. You know, I can't make a phone function half the time. So I'm like the rest of the world, but she's very good at it. Anyhow, so we got very lucky. So we set up and we broadcast from that position for a long time. And then we bought a new house at the end of 2021 and built out this studio. And now we're about to build a new building altogether because this is nice. And I know you were here, but it's too small. And so we're about to, come spring of 25, we're going to break ground on a new building that'll be bigger, more robust, with more room to move around, and we'll be out of our house. It's great to broadcast from your house, but you know, kids come and go and dogs bark and things happen. And so it's just better. And we like the idea. I mean, it's going to be a short drive to where the new office is, but it's a drive. You need to get up and you need to drive to the office. Might be short, but you get to do that. It means you got to get up and move. And so we're excited about that. We've come a long way. And I'll say it again, I couldn't have done it without Ivy. We came together at a great time. She manages the business portion of it, much of it. I do sales and so forth, and I sit here for 4.5 hours a day live broadcasting, and it works. It works great for us.
Well, the only bad thing I can think of with having to drive to the studio, you know, you have to have pants on when you
Well, there's that. Oh, you don't. I mean, you might scare the neighbors, you know, you don't actually have to, you know, it's still optional, I suppose. Hey, neighbor, how you doing? Yeah, they might not appreciate it as much as I do. So, but no, it's, I'm excited about that. And so we're going to build a building. We looked at buying buildings because commercial space, you can buy buildings, but then again, maybe I should ask an advisor. I don't think buying commercial real estate right now is a very good idea. That's
well, Steve, it's been great chatting, you know, a little bit about the behind the scenes, a little bit about the story. Really appreciate you coming on. And I think your fans will be happy to learn more about you.
Nick, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.